Much. Welcome back. Now, let's have a little squizzy. I think we're waiting maybe on a couple of senators. Now we've got policy and research. Now I have questioners. Senator Edwards, you have some questions in this area, so I may get you to kick off. We've only got 20 minutes.
Right, no problem at all. When will the government publish its revised peak oil report, BETA 117, which Minister Carr said in February 2012 hearings was not up to scratch?
Senator David Williamson, Executive Director, Policy and Research Division. Senator, there's no intention to republish that report, the report that you're referring to. I think we discussed the last hearing that a lot of the work that went into that report has manifested in a variety of other pieces of work that the Bureau has done, and we've provided a list of those, but there's no specific intention to republish
Is that when you sent it out to all these other organisations, the German Federal Institute for Geosciences and Natural Resources and other government departments?
No, that was the process of, while that work was being undertaken, some of the consultation that was done on that report.
So, it's been a controversial report, hasn't it? Can their feedback be provided on notice?
I'd have to check, but I think we provided an answer. Again, this might be several hearings ago that actually outlined the feedback that we got.
No, I'm not sure you have.
Okay, I will take it on notice and check.
We'll both check.
Now, I'm sure in my opening statement today, I'm sure I specifically mentioned Senator Nash and mobile phones. Did I?
Yes. It's in the Hansard.
Oh, okay. I think it's all right. I just think I maybe imagined.
Slab, mate. Does the department agree?
Senator Edwards.
Thank you. Does the department agree with some of the assertion of the following impacts are examples of Australia's increasing energy insecurity and wider energy vulnerability in the region? And the suggested impacts so far: Qantas moves hub from Singapore to Dubai as jet fuel supply there is assumed to be more reliable. Sydney's Shell refinery is closing. Australia's fuel import vulnerability increases as Sydney's Clyde refinery is closing. Sydney's Caltex refinery will close in 2014. After Sydney's refinery closure, Caltex to import fuel from Chevron's shrinking sales. BHP shelves Olympic dam mine expansion in a series of controversy, but with other issues such as high diesel prices for removal of huge quantities of overburden. BHP bulletins Australian oil reserves in long-term decline. High diesel prices also impact on trucking companies because governments fail to implement a proactive transition to gas as transport fuel. So in the context of all of those issues, does the department agree with some assertion that the following those impacts are leading to energy insecurity?
I don't think it's for us to comment on energy matters. I think the government will, I understand, shortly be releasing its final energy white paper. That sets out the government's position in relation to Australia's energy security and supply. Certainly a number of the instances you've cited there I don't think relate to energy security issues. Certainly the one I'm more familiar with, which is the Qantas decision to form a partnership with Emirates. I don't think I've heard that is being driven by energy security issues. Rather, it reflects the commercial reality of the international aviation market.
Well, that's some of the commentary out there.
Well, I certainly don't think that piece of commentary is correct, and I can't really comment on the others. That'd be a matter for the energy and resources portfolio.
That would be an opinion. Thanks very much. They're rare. Look, if I can move on to another question. How many million barrels of oil, millions tonnes of coal, billion square metres of gas are needed to run Australia's cities in the next 10 years?
Come on, Mr. Murdoch, you've got that in your pocket.
I don't think that was my special topic for today, to be honest.
What is the absorption capacity of the atmosphere when burning these fossil fuels? No, I'm going to come back to it.
Oh, this is a trick question.
No,
okay,
the Director-General of New South Wales answered this question in a seminar. Oh, that question is too hard. So I'm going to give you the opportunity to provide that on notice.
I'm happy to take that notice, see if I can assist. I'll see what we can do.
To your I'm losing. I'm sorry.
We've got to have a policy on energy sustainability. Western Australia, I believe, has a policy on
West Australia's got nothing, mate. They're full of bulldogs.
Senator, there is look, so much we can presume is be humorous, but this is now a bit of a giggle from this side of the table, and you really ought to go down to the right committee if you want these questions pursued.
Well, this is Policy and Research, Minister, isn't it?
Yeah, but you've got to get the right policy and the right research and the right portfolio.
So we haven't got the right research here in this one.
Well, it's what you've been told now several times.
So some state that Queensland plans to export more than 10 times the gas New South Wales.
Yeah, but it's an energy question, Senator.
But isn't it a question of policy, Minister?
No. Look, it's not every policy. This is not a department that handles whole of government policy analysis. You're going to have to go to the right committee.
That's it. I'm taking my jacket off now.
That's it. We'll both take it off. All right. Well, which committee do you suggest I go to, Minister?
Well, I'd try the Energy Committee, and I'd suggest that this is Minister Ferguson's portfolio. It's resources and energy.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks. Senator Edwards. Now, Senator Nash, I know you do have some questions in the remaining minutes that we have.
Just local road bridges. Hi, Dr. Donald. Local road bridges. Has there been any research done on the state of the local, state and federally controlled bridges across Australia?
Oh, Majesty's, yes.
Bridge work.
Dr. Gary Dolman, Head of the Bureau of Infrastructure, Transport and Regional Economics. Our Bureau hasn't done such work.
Okay. anything at all that you've done at all in relation to bridges?
Not directly. There's Australian, or ARB it's now called, ARRB, the Australian Road Research Board is its former name. They do some work for the state governments, and I imagine they've done some work on bridges.
Okay, so you might have done any work. Are there any statistics available through Victory on perhaps the local, state and federal owned numbers of what's where, or...?
Numbers of bridges?
Yeah.
No, we don't collect statistics on that.
Okay. That's that then.
All right,
Chair.
Senator Nash.
Can I hang on, one last question. Have you considered doing any work on bridges?
No.
Will you consider doing any work on bridges?
Senator, I think, as Dr Dolman said, Austroads and ARB are the research bodies for the state governments, of which we also participate. We're happy to take on notice what work they've done and come back to you in relation to that.
Okay, look, that would be good. And while I'm smiling, it actually is serious. It's a huge issue in regional Australia.
We understand.
And there's a whole lot of buck passing about who should be doing what where. So I'm just trying to identify where there might be a body of work where we can start.
And certainly in areas like the Heavy Vehicle Safety Program, we have been quite heavily focused on this issue of productivity, which often includes remediation of some of these pavements. So it is an area which we're interested in. As I say, I think the best source is we'll get you what's happened across the Austroads research and come back to you off that.
That would be really useful. Thank you very much, Mr Murdoch.
Thank you, Senator Nash. Senator Back, did you have any questions of policy?
Only on the high-speed rail, Chairman. I just wondered if the opportunity was there for the officers to brief us on any progress or the status of any studies being undertaken on the high-speed rail project.
Certainly, Senator. I'll ask Mr Farmer and Mr Williamson.
I might kick off. The study that the government commissioned following the last election, Senator, is not far from completion. It's being done in 2 phases. The first phase report was published in August last year and is available on the website. The second phase is due to be finished around the end of the year. The second phase is essentially to take the findings of the first phase and explore them further. So it's looking at a preferred alignment, it's looking at cost issues, it's looking at how you might stage high-speed rail if you were to proceed with construction, it's looking at patronage issues, demand forecasting. Quite a comprehensive study, and as I say, we're expecting it to be finished around the end of the year.
Cost benefit?
Cost benefit, indeed.
Financing. It'll be released afterwards.
Yes, I think the Minister's indicated that once the government's considered the report that it will be publicly released, yes.
And in the event that it was favourable, what sort of time frame would you envisage before something would actually be physically on the ground?
Well, obviously, it's a matter for the government to consider what to do.
I'm not suggesting what calendar date. I'm suggesting after approval was given. What would you be talking? 5 years?
I think Mr. Farmer will correct me. I think international experience is it's sort of around 7 to 10 years post decision before. Yeah, that's the international experience. Obviously, it would be different here, but that's as close as we've got at the moment.
Thank you, Chairman.
Oh, okay. Look, on that, well, I'll tell you what I'll do. There are no further questions. I might just use this opportunity, 1, because I'm a decent bloke, 2 is because I'm fair, and we've got 3, we've got a couple of minutes left, but in all the excitement of asking questions to Mr Deegan and Infrastructure Australia and what may have been said at the Liberal Party state conference or federal conference, I want to raise a couple of things with you, Mr Murdoch, with the Pacific Highway. Can I do that?
Certainly, Senator.
And I think my colleagues won't yell at me, because we've got time. In terms of the Pacific Highway, Mr Murdoch, could you let us know the cost of completing the full duplication?
Our latest advice, Senator, from the New South Wales officials, which I think is advice from late last year, is the cost of complete the duplication is now well over $7 billion. $7 billion to complete the duplication.
Wow.
Of the whole highway.
Thank you, Dave. And do you have a completion date for on the basis of that cost?
The Australian government retains its target completion date of 2016. As you know, the Australian government in the budget this year committed an additional $3.56 billion, which is the 50% of the cost of completion of the highway. That is to achieve the target of completion in 2016. That remains the Australian government's position, and those costings are based on that completion in 2016.
So what happens if we don't meet the completion date of 2016 as a nation?
Number of effects, one of which is the ongoing cost, both in productivity and safety, from the current condition of the Pacific Highway. Also, as we know, even on conservative estimates, the cost of the project will increase over time as the project is further pushed out. We've done some initial indicative estimates based on very conservative estimates. We'd estimate that if the completion was pushed out to, say, 2020, it would be at least an $800 million additional cost in today's dollars. And,
800 million.
And if the completion was pushed out beyond 2020 to, say, 2024, our estimate it would be something of the order of a $1.2 to $1.3 billion cost in today's dollars additional to the current estimate of completion.
So on that, how are we looking at the moment in terms of moving along and meeting that date?
At the moment, the New South Wales government position is that they are not prepared to meet the Australian government's funding condition of 50-50 to provide the full amount for the duplication. The New South Wales government argues that the funding split should be 80-20, and the New South Wales government in their recent budget allocated only $1.5 billion in response to the Australian government's offer of 3.5. That's not enough to complete the project by 2016. We await further advice from New South Wales on their position. At this stage, the Australian government's position is it will only release additional funding on the basis of 50-50 contribution from both governments.
Was there any indication from the New South Wales government that they were going to stall or renege?
I think it's fair to say we await their advice. Their position at this stage remains that they will only fund 20% of the work.
Yeah, we understand they're considering the matter.
Well, where's Senator Williams when he needed him? I didn't even send another SMS to the Road Minister there. Senator Edwards, did you want to ask any questions on this? And as you were interested in maybe this sort of similar situation elsewhere?
We could move on.
We could, but I'm enjoying it, Minister, you see, because you see, Minister, when I think we're going to finish early, I can lay my house on the line that some obscure senator that never makes a contribution to this committee will just pop up at the last minute.
And your answer to this problem is to ask more questions?
Yes, so I get to do it rather than an independent, a Green or a coalition senator from Tasmania.
Follow me.
While it's very interesting, Chair, I think that...
You don't want to ask any more questions?
It's very clear, the evidence that's been given, what's going on. I hope it doesn't turn out like the electrification line of the Gawler, Elizabeth de Gawler in Adelaide.
Okay, so in other words, you don't want to ask. All right, on that then, Mr Murdoch, thank you for your indulgence, and we will now... Hey, look, we're 4 minutes early, Minister. What's the bet I lose it in the next lot? Call Major Cities Unit.
Thank you. Did you just say something rude about Tasmania?
You want some sugar?
Coalition Tasmanian senators when there's a pre-selection on, because they all come in and fight to get the call to ask where their bridge is over their little creek in their hamlet. Not you or not Senator Cole. Everybody else is fair game. Okay. Welcome, Ms Eklund. Okay, questions, Major Cities Unit. Senator Nash.
Thank you very much, Chair. Just some issues around the staffing. What's the current staffing in the MCA?
Dorte Eklund, Executive Director, Major Cities Unit, 10.
Okay. Is that expected to increase or decrease over the next 12 months?
It will not increase. It will either stay the same or decline.
Okay. On what basis?
Natural attrition and budget limitations.
And budget?
Limitations?
Limitations, okay. So if somebody's going to retire, you'll let them go? Or?
Potentially. Or we may replace with a more junior person.
Okay.
As I indicated earlier, Senator, it's likely we will not fill positions that fall vacant through the remainder of the year because of the fiscal constraints on the department.
If you replace with a more junior person, are they doing the same job or what's the reconfiguration? Obviously, if you need somebody a certain level to do a job now, if you replace them with a junior person, is that job going to be done to the same level?
Our work changes over time. Certainly we would expect a more junior person not to do the same type of work as a more senior person.
Okay, can we just run through what the 10 do?
Sure. So I manage the staff of 9. The main tasks that we're doing at the moment is...
Oh, sorry, I should say, what's each individual?
person?
Yeah.
Okay, I've got an EL2 in Sydney that manages the Sydney office, as well as undertaking policy work and coordination and consultation with our stakeholders. Likewise, I have an EL2 who manages the Canberra office, and each of those deputised when I'm unable to be present. So they manage the 2 offices. They work across government on policy issues, provide input into the work of other portfolios that are relevant to cities. Likewise, they liaise and work with other parts of this portfolio on various policy issues that are of relevance to cities again. They have an active role in the production of our publications, and they supervise the staff that work for them. And then I have...
Are you able to give us a salary range for those?
I would have...
Take that on notice.
Thank you. If you could just take it on notice for all of them after we've run through, that'd be
We
great.
can give you a description of the task of the unit and their salary ranges.
Yeah, that would be great. But I was like, when you just run through the actual tasks now, I can
Well,
understand.
it's mainly policy advice. So I do have...
So the other 7 are all policy advice?
Yeah, I have one administrative person who is my executive assistant, but all the others undertake policy work.
Okay. And are they separately tasked in different policy areas?
There is some differentiation between the main work that the Sydney office does and the Canberra office, but they all contribute to the State of Australian Cities reporting annually, and we run pretty closely a matrix management approach where the work, rather than a sort of hierarchical, where people contribute to the work across both offices. So.
Okay, so it's just Sydney and Canberra, just the 2 offices? Okay, so why the need for an office in Sydney as well as Canberra?
The Major Cities Unit was established similar time to Infrastructure Australia.
Is it in the Deutsche Bank?
No, it's not. It was, but it no longer is.
Oh, was it? Oh, when was it in the Deutsche Bank? Sorry,
when it was originally established.
Okay, so how long was it housed there?
It was there for, I can't remember exactly, a couple of years. After the last election, there was some changes to the reporting arrangements for the Major Cities Unit. We used to report through Infrastructure Australia. Now we report directly as a division into the department, and therefore I operate more actively as part of the executive of the department. After those changes, we established an office in Canberra as well.
In Canberra as well. Okay, so if you wouldn't mind just taking on notice just the period of time you're in Deutsche Bank and where you've moved to since. So having had it established in Sydney, why then the need for a Canberra office?
As I mentioned, I operate much more closely as part of the executive of the department, and therefore I try to be at our weekly executive meetings, and it also enables me to work much more closely with the rest of the portfolio and also work across governments, different government agencies, which the Canberra office makes much more
sense.
Yeah. One of the critical agendas coming out of the National Urban Policy, which the government released, was the role of the Major Cities Unit in coordinating Commonwealth activities on urban development in cities, hence the need for and the expansion of the office to take up the role across the Commonwealth. I chair the Commonwealth Cities Group, and Ms Eklund and her team support me in that role. So being based in Canberra assists with dealing with other portfolio agencies.
Makes it more practical, absolutely. So when there was the change in reporting arrangements and you were no longer reporting to Infrastructure Australia, why didn't you just move out of there and come back to Canberra and have one office? Why set up another office in Sydney?
We had a number of specialist staff who were recruited in Sydney.
And they didn't want to move?
Not just that, but it was also that a lot of the relationship...
So that was part of it?
That was part of it. The number of our specialist urban staff were recruited in Sydney, and
they didn't want to go to Canberra.
We would have lost a number of them had they been moved to Canberra. Hence the decision to retain them. We operate out of a small space in the Family and Community Services Department in Sydney, and that's enabled us to retain those specialist staff.
So what's the Is there any analysis of the cost of keeping those staff in Sydney? And I understand you obviously want to keep it, expert staff where you can, but has there been any analysis of the cost of keeping those staff in Sydney because they didn't want to move, as opposed to if they'd been prepared to move to Canberra and just be in the one building? Isn't it duplication of resources?
Look, it's a
because they didn't want to move to Canberra?
It's a relatively small cost to us. As I say, we take a sublease of a space with the Department of Family and Community Services in Sydney. The marginal cost of having that office in Sydney is not large.
How much is not large?
I'd have to take on notice what the rent is. It's not a huge amount. It's essentially facilities for 3 staff.
3 staff, Senator. We're talking about in Sydney who are there and using, facilities from another government department, so it's a marginal cost of the rent. Were they to be relocated to Canberra, there'd be a cost in that relocation as well.
What sort of jobs are they doing?
Policy development. It was Sydney staff that developed the urban policy, the urban design protocol, and also the Sydney staff predominantly that have done the work on the active travel report.
Okay, so there's 3. So there was seriously nobody else with those qualifications or that expertise that could have been located in Canberra?
Well, we had high quality staff and we had the opportunity to retain them and I took the decision to retain them in Sydney.
Okay, so the EL2s, the 2 EL2s, are they based in Canberra or Sydney?
1 in each office.
1 in each. Okay. Yeah, if you could just take all those things for me, I noticed that would be very useful. Just in terms of the budget over the 4 financial years, 12-13 to 15-16, can you give us an indication over the next 4 years what the budget is for the MCU?
For the major cities unit, the budget this year is around $1.4 million.
1.48.
1.48, which is a reduction on last year, and essentially in the forward years you can anticipate a further reduction in the budget, as we can across all the divisions of the department. I can't give you the quantum. We only look out at, basically we work on the base of the forward estimates of around funding of around $1.3 to $1.4 million per annum.
Okay, so working on those rough figures that may well be adjusted as necessary over
if there
the
are further reductions to the department's budget, then we'll make further reductions to individual division budgets.
Okay. Of the 1.48, how much of that is staff salary?
Most of it, about 1.3, 1.2, 1.3.
Okay. And what's the remaining 0.18 allocated to?
Oh, it's general operational. We have a very, very modest consultancy budget, but it's mainly services like proofreading, our publications and limited print runs on our publications, some staff development and travel.
Okay. Why do you need a proofreader? Why do you need to outsource a proof for a proofreader?
It's a standard approach that we do have an editor that actually look at the document to make sure it's of a high professional standard.
But haven't you retained really, really, really smart people that didn't want to move to Canberra and they were so good you had to keep them?
I think
they can't proofread?
I think Ms Eklund was just talking more generally about not just proofreading but the whole printing preparation process.
I understand that, but how much of a component of that goes on proofreading?
Very small.
How much is pretty small?
I think it's part of the print setting for the publication of documents. I'll take that on notice, but it's not a large amount, and it's part of the print publication.
Any amount is a large amount for the taxpayer, Mr. Maddock.
I appreciate that, but at the same time, we do produce, and as you know, very high quality documents, and
very high quality.
Make sure they are properly set.
Very much so. Very much so. All right, if you could take that on notice, that would be very useful. Thank you. Just in terms of the Livable Cities program, are you able to give us a breakdown of expenditure for the 12-13 to 15-16?
The management of the Livable Cities program happens under our nation building division. The Major Cities Unit has provided policy input into the evaluation of the applications, but we do not manage that program.
That'd be right. Mr. Maddock, can you help me out given that I've missed nation building?
I can certainly give you. Sorry, so you're after
just the expenditure for the Livable Cities program for the.
Well, so there's $20 million over 2 years, 12-13 and 13-14 for that program.
Okay. Is there any allocated post that time, or just the $20 million for 12-13, 13-14?
Just for the $20 million is all that's been allocated to that program. That program is due to cease after that 2 years.
After the 2. Oh, okay. So it's due to cease At the end of
It was only
2014?
funded for 2 years.
2014, okay. At the moment, how much of that expenditure has already been committed or contracted, and how much still remains?
There's $13 million in this year and $7 million in next year. I'll get the details for you of how much has been committed.
25 successful projects.
25 projects were announced as successful. There are 13 projects which have now been signed project agreements and are underway. 2 projects have been withdrawn because of the Queensland Government's withdrawal of matched funding. And the remainder of the projects that have been announced are subject to further negotiation with proponents to settle funding agreements.
All right. Are you able on notice to give us a list of those projects and the
certainly.
funding allocated to each of those and the expenditure thus far?
Yes, certainly we
That
can
would be
do
great.
that. And as I said, there are 2 projects which have now been advised by the Queensland Government they will not provide matching funding, and therefore those projects will be withdrawn.
Okay, lovely. Thank you. Thanks, Chair.
Thanks, Senator Nash. Senator Rannan, then Senator Ludlam. Time permitting, we now have about 10 minutes left.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Wanted to pick up about the National Smart Managed Motorways program, and what are the benchmarks put in place to assess whether this program is successful in addressing congestions in cities and improving overall efficiency of the transport network?
Again, the Major Cities Unit is not responsible for managing this program. It's nation building.
Certainly, in terms of the Managed Motorways program, we can talk about some of the actual projects that have been funded and what they have delivered in terms of improved traffic flow, reduced carbon emissions as a result of traffic running more smoothly, reduced commuter times.
So could you give me examples of where the motorways, so are you talking about like the motorway projects in Sydney, for example?
I'm talking about some of the examples like the Managed Motorway project in Melbourne that's delivered some good results, and I'm happy to provide you with further information on that, about the results.
So which motorways have you been working on?
Well, there's a number of proposal projects in terms of the managed motorways. Infrastructure Australia has rated it, I think, a project that is ready to proceed in terms of about $6 billion worth of managed motorways projects. Within each of those projects, there's information about what the specific project intends to achieve.
And how have you determined that this will increase transport efficiency?
That's part of the submissions in terms of the project proposals are about what the individual project will achieve in terms about delivering greater throughput of traffic, etc.
So could you supply information? Because there is, and you would have, I imagine you're aware of the former head of Roads and Traffic Authority and Rail, State Rail in New South Wales has been critical of this motorway emphasis, and that where it's in fact not bringing the promised results in terms of more efficient transport movements, and the induced traffic phenomenon is becoming more real. So is that something that you've looked at, the induced traffic aspect that goes with motorways?
Can I just clarify? I think the comments that you're referring to refer to new motorway projects and whether they're the appropriate choice for the investment in Sydney. What Ms O'Connell is talking about, the managed motorway program, is effectively retrofitting intelligent transport systems into existing motorways to increase flow, as you know. We can certainly have a look at and provide you with information on notice in relation to the forecast benefits, and also, as Ms O'Connell's indicated, some of the real experience has already happened on some of the motorways, particularly in Melbourne, where there have been very successful introduction of ITS technology such as ramp metering and the like, which has improved traffic flow quite markedly. I think there's separate issues.
But could I just come in because of my time? The induced traffic phenomenon is something that's associated with existing motorways. It's not just something about new motorways. So is that something that you have made an assessment of? Yes, it's well known that you get a speed up of traffic in the early stages of motorways or with motorway upgrades, but then in time the congestion comes, and then the proposal is, well, let's add another couple of lanes, let's look at how these ramps are managed. But have you made that assessment that there is another side of motorways where the induced traffic phenomenon just results in more congestion, because the message it sends to motorists is get in your cars and use these motorways?
Well, I think the induced traffic debate's a little bit of an inexact science. I mean, the reality is, if we're seeing more traffic on motorways, I think isn't that a good outcome in the sense that we're seeing more activity, more development, more economic activity. So,
but if it's congested, isn't that a problem? I mean, we're talking about congestion.
But Senator, let's not get carried away with this induced traffic debate. We build infrastructure to promote growth. People make judgments about the level of capacity and congestion on that. Our job is to ensure that we reduce congestion on all modes of transport to maximise the economic opportunities.
So you spoke about the scientific basis of, and I think if I interpret it correctly, challenging some of the arguments around induced
well, I think it's far from exact science.
But what's the scientific basis that your improvements will actually go on to relieve congestion?
Well, if you look at the experience of managed motorways and the technology that is now available, we are certainly seeing dramatic improvements in traffic flow, in certainly Melbourne, and certainly internationally, quite significant improvements. Now, over time, quite clearly, as growth takes place, there will be new traffic which will enter those systems, and that's a good thing. As it does with every transport mode. So I'm not too sure what the point you're making in relation to induced traffic is.
Well, the induced, that I think that you would be aware that there is considerable analysis of that induced traffic in time results in motorway flows actually becoming heavily congested. And Sydney motorways are a classic example of that.
You can make the same argument about public transport systems, that as you improve the system, people use them more and they become congested. Sorry, I don't understand your point.
I think, Senator, the application of the intelligent transport system is in the form of managed motorways, allows you to avoid increasing additional lanes on motorways for a period of time. So you're just making more efficient use of the infrastructure you've got.
Yes, but it seems the message that I'm hearing from you, Mr Murdoch, is that you reject the induced traffic phenomenon and that the issue of congestion, you're arguing, can be managed successfully on city motorways.
Well, I don't think I'd say I rejected it. What I'm saying is
Mr Murdoch, I'm so sorry, but I will have to make that the last question, so I'm sorry I cut over you, and then I'm going to go to Senator Ludlam.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
Yes, Mr Murdoch,
well,
sorry.
I don't think I was rejecting the induced traffic demand. I'm saying it's an inexact science. I'm not too sure where it takes you as a point of policy you were talking from.
So your science is
Senator
exact.
Rhiannon, I've been more than fair. I did put you on notice. So I'm sorry. It is your colleague you're cutting over. Senator Ludlam. And then I'm going to have one last one from Senator Nash before we go. So.
Maybe we can, Mr Murdoch, maybe we can provide you with some research on the phenomenon of induced traffic. It is a reasonably exact science. I share my colleague's frustration.
I wouldn't share your view.
And I believe you may have just told the committee that more cars equals more activity equals better for everyone. The more cars on the road, the better our economy is.
Well, certainly more mobility is a good outcome, isn't it?
Wow. Okay, I don't know where to go with that. Ms Eklund, I just want to update, ask you if you could update us with some of the things that we spoke about as far back as February. Active transport strategy, you said there'd been some setbacks, other things have been prioritised, but I understand there might be some movement. I think Senator Rhiannon raised the Nation Building 2 program that includes a connecting people strategy around active transport. Is there anything to report there?
In terms of updating the active travel, I can't give you a copy, but here it is here, and it's going to print today. It will be launched by Minister Albanese on the 29th of October.
So just give us the title of that document.
It's called Walking, Riding and Access to Public Transport.
Okay.
Draft report from the department.
That's a draft report from the department, but that will be published once the Minister's cleared it?
It will, yes. It will be subject to public consultation
over
a 3-month period.
I guess you're not going to be able to preempt it all that much before it's been tabled. But what can you tell us, maybe in more general terms, about how it might actually impact Commonwealth budget decisions? Is there anything in play at the moment, or Mr Murdoch, feel free to take this on if you will, around a standing appropriation for cycling and active transport?
Senator, as I indicated earlier, the government is yet to make commitments in relation to future projects under NB2 beyond those we've discussed this morning.
So nothing yet. All right. So presumably this active transport strategy is going to be informing that thinking now?
It certainly will be, yes.
Okay. Is there anything that you can tell us, and I regrettably wasn't able to ask this morning because time was too short with IA or infrastructure investments,
about the fact that we are putting cycle lanes onto roads, onto very high speed, high capacity roads that's nothing more than basically a painted strip on the road, which is really in direct contravention to the way that you're supposed to segregate cycling traffic from high speed vehicle traffic. Is there anything in your work or in the preparation of this draft that addresses that fact?
I think the discussion paper will contain some very good analysis of what are some best practices in terms of provision of cycling infrastructure. Yes. Okay, that's good, because we're doing a fair bit of worst practice at the moment. So that'll be a relief. You said that was that you'll be publishing that later in this month. Okay, that's right. That's good. The urban design protocol is obviously a very good piece of work. It was released almost a year ago. Can you tell us how it's tracking?
It has in excess of 40 champions who have committed to pursuing the principles inside the protocol. It is now embedded in the Green Infrastructure Council's sustainability rating tool for infrastructure, and it is also embedded in the Green Building Council's communities rating tool, which is currently being piloted. And it's been referred to in a number of other policy documents of states, territories and local governments. And it's had about 135,000 full downloads. Okay. Okay, that's good. That all sounds very positive. Do you see any role for the principles in that framework to be tied to any stronger regulatory frameworks or standards that are enforceable? So what I'm trying to say is there any area in Commonwealth law where you think there is where there could be a role for law reform, for example, to embed those principles? Well, we've encouraged proponents under Livable Cities to be consistent with the protocol, as well as the COAG criteria for cities and the National Urban Policy itself. So there's certainly, there would be opportunity. We see it as complementary to the recently announced initiative in terms of Livable Housing Australia, and we're working closely with Livable Housing Australia to do some cross-promotion, because the protocol does talk about championing accessibility and universal design as well. So there's certainly areas, potentially in the housing area or other parts of government, where there may be some benefit in referring to the protocol. I would think so. This might seem a bit off topic, but do Infrastructure Australia or infrastructure investments use that, or so let's keep it to IA, do they use those guidelines when making investment decisions or recommendations? I'm not aware of that specifically, but certainly if infrastructure proposals are using the Green Infrastructure Council's rating tool, then automatically the principles would be considered. Now that has been a voluntary tool, but the private sector seems to be picking it up at the moment. That's
Senator Ludlam, because I did say to Senator Nash just one very quick one.